ladies and gentlemen. Can we check that the live broadcast is on? It is on, so we're free to go. Good morning then. I'm Councillor Philip Owen, the chairman of this committee, and I would like to welcome all of you to this meeting of the Governance and Ethics Committee, which is being broadcast live as usual to our many fans out there across the county. We know they like to tune in on a regular basis. Good. Can I have your approval to accept the minutes as a correct record for the last meeting? Thank you very much. I'll sign those at the end.
Chair, just on the minutes, there's two people. One person, Bestnet for is it Freud, and Mark Surge on it twice. On the bottom, they're entered twice.
The auditors are on twice. The auditors were consulted.
Okay, quick notes, that's it.
Oh, right, yes. Thank you very much. Yes, we'll cross one of them off. They're not here today, though. They had enough last time, obviously. Declarations of interest. Are there any declarations? Sorry, I've missed apologies for absence. It's one of those days. I'm getting excited going on holiday tomorrow. And I'm taking my phone with me. Right. Apologies for absence. We've received apologies from Councillor Barnfather for other reasons, and yet again we are honoured to have the chairman of the county council sitting in on this committee. He obviously enjoys himself so much. It's most unusual to have the chairman of the county council, and for consecutive meetings it's unheard of, but we're delighted to see you.
Well, thank you for making me so welcome.
Oh yeah, that's fine, that's fine. And then we've got apologies from Councillor Michael Payne. It doesn't say which job he's doing this morning, but it does say other reasons. And Councillor Creamer, the perpetual substitute for the Labour group, is here with us once again. Glad to see you again. Councillor Helen Ann Smith for other reasons and is being substituted by Councillor Purdue Horan. So if you'd like to note those, I would be grateful. Right, item 3 is declarations of interest by members and officers. Are there any declarations? Councillor Purdue Horan. Can you speak into the microphone?
My apologies.
Your fans out there won't be able to hear you.
I'm just seeking clarification for item 5. In my eagerness to act as substitute today, I've forgotten that I'm listed in item 5. So am I allowed to speak in that item?
So we went back and confirmed this to David this morning, but yes, you don't need to declare an interest. You're able to be in the room, speak and vote on the item.
Thank you very much. Good. So any other declarations of interest? No? Good. So if we can move on then to the item number 4, which is the Local Government and Social Care Ombudsman's decisions, which you have set out in front of you. I will move the recommendation on page 9. Thank you. Right. Any officer or members wish to speak on the first of the 2 items that are there?
Good. Hi, Councillor Owen. I'm Robert Briggs, the Service Manager for the Pre-16 EHC Assessment Team. Yeah. We'd just like to...
No, you are on. You just have to sit closer to it, okay. I'm afraid.
We'd just like to apologise for the delay that the families experienced. We did write a report to this committee earlier this year, outlining the progress we've made towards EHC needs assessments, and my colleague Orla is able to provide any more clarity if any members would like that.
Okay. Are there any members that... yes, Councillor Deakin.
I'm breaking mine now. I know that we're doing a lot with recruitment wise in order to help. How are we getting on with that? Where are we at with that? And are we starting to go into unis and things like that to show that this is a pathway? Because I know it's not something that's overly familiar to my daughter's in uni. It's not something that's overly familiar to them, that this is a pathway they could take. So I just wondered what sort of oomph we're doing there to try and.
Okay, go for it then.
Hi, so I'm Orla Green, I'm the Principal Educational Psychologist. The recruitment is going extremely well, particularly in the context of a national shortage of educational psychologists. So at this point in time, we have employed the full 9 educational psychologists. They'll all work with us when they qualify. Some of them are working with us at the moment, as of September, as trainee educational psychologists. So they work with us part-time under the supervision of a qualified educational psychologist, and they're also at university. And then they'll join us as full-time qualified educational psychologists in September 25 and September 26. So obviously, you know, life events might change and people might not join us, but as long as everything goes to plan, all of those practitioners are with us now. And some of them have been assistant educational psychologists with us also, which is really nice to see the Grow Your Own strategy, which has been approved by this board, coming into play. And some of them have come from staff, teaching assistants, for example, in Nottinghamshire schools and are from Nottinghamshire. So I think there's some really good feedback for the Grow Your Own approach.
Good, thank you. That's encouraging progress to hear. Any further questions on that particular case? Are you happy to? Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Last week I was at a meeting of the Children and Families Scrutiny Committee discussing SEND, amongst other items, Special Educational Needs and Disabilities Action Plan and progress made. Following the critical report from the CQC last year, it was described, and I invited, to assist my understanding, I invited analogies with football, and I put it to the meeting that we're not in the Premier League, we're probably not even in the Championship, and I invited the independent chair of the partnership to comment, and her comments were that along with the cabinet member, Councillor Smith, who was very proud of the service being provided, that we are nearer the Premiership. And yet just a week later, we see that 2 families have been impacted, and it's cost taxpayers $7,900 for these 2 cases. It has been stated to me by other parents that these issues go a lot deeper and wider. And my question is, how much money has come from the Children and Families budget to pay for the fines so far this year? And how does that compare to the previous financial year?
Are those figures that you have immediately available, or do you want to give a written answer?
They're not available at the moment, but we could, of course, put that in writing after the meeting.
Yeah, that's fine. And the comparison with the previous year would be helpful. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
We got there in the end. Thank you. Anything else on that first one? No. The second case.
Yes, good morning, colleagues. That one sits with me, and having read it again before coming to this committee, on reading it, it sounds a very damning indictment of this local authority and of the personnel involved, and I apologise for the fact there is technical fault in some areas of this case, in our failure to formally consult with the first college that the young man went to, and in a technical error which resulted in some errors in his EHCP However, I almost must declare an interest, Councillor, but I don't technically have to. I have known this young man and his family for over 10 years and watched with more than interest his journey through the educational system. We use the word exceptional, in my view, too often. In this particular example, it is certainly warranted because this young man's profile almost defines my description. The word I used, I understand, is savant, which means he is technically exceptionally able in some areas, but his learning profile is not flat, and he has big holes in some areas and an extreme difficulty in sitting examinations. And I have personally worked with this family for some time and have met what was then a boy who is now a man, and I still believe he has exceptional potential. But there was in many ways a clustering of factors around this particular journey, including some uncertainty about where this young man would go on leaving school. We had hoped, and it was planned, that he would transition to higher education, but that did not happen, and he was placed at a further education college where the local authority fully committed to underwrite the package of support required, but that institution was unable to identify the correct level of support. He subsequently moved to a second FE college where there were lesser but similar issues. And we have tried very hard to work with this family throughout the journey. I can understand why the Ombudsman has found fault, but I do still believe we are genuinely committed to securing the best outcomes for this 23-year-old. And I can't give any further detail really around the individual circumstance, but I apologise for the errors, but do believe that there has been a genuine commitment and remains so to this exceptional young man.
Thank you very much. You really shouldn't beat yourself up so much on this. There are a lot of things that we were able to discuss in private, which we cannot discuss publicly, unfortunately, so that you don't necessarily get the full picture. I mean, I could interpret this that we're being blamed because he failed his exams, if you want to put it in its simplest form. But there's probably more to it than that.
Layer upon layer of complexity here.
Any questions? Councillor Butler.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, reading the report, I suspected, as is often the very fact you have an EHC plan, and it's often the case that there are issues and things going on in people's lives that we don't know about and we don't need to know about, frankly, honestly. We're just looking at the Ombudsman's report, and I understand that completely. And rather like yourself, I mean, I know that as we heard in the other case, EHC team is under an awful lot of pressure one way and another. So many different cases having to be dealt with. It's regrettable that these complaints come in, but they are what they are, and we're very much in the hands of the Ombudsman. But one little query I have, which I suppose is not just on this particular case, but just in general, is when it comes to the matter of compensation and symbolic payments and such like. Now, and I appreciate you won't be able to go into details on this, but a general query really. We've been told by the Ombudsman to pay £6,000 as compensation for this. Now, in anyone's book, that's a lot of money, and whether you're an individual or a group or a council, and I suppose my query is once that award or that decision has been made by the Ombudsman and we've done it, is that it? I mean, does the Ombudsman give any sort of expectation or guidance to the family or the young person involved as to what that money should be perhaps spent on, for example? So does the Ombudsman say, right, I'm awarding you X amount, £6,000 or whatever, what I would advise you or require you to do is invest in this course, that course, the other? Does it work like that, or is it literally just a payment made to the family? And I just don't know the answer. I'm just curious, really.
Okay.
I'm sorry, working. Thanks for your question, Councillor Butler. In short, the answer is no. They just tell us to give them however much it is, and there has to be an element of trust that they're going to use it. But I do know in this case that is that a laptop's been bought.
Yes, I understand the young man invested sensibly with the money given from the public purse, and he has a very keen interest in ICT, so he upgraded his kit.
Yeah. Thank you. So the short answer is no. We have raised this before at this committee, and I think we even raised it with the Ombudsman themselves when we had a meeting with the Ombudsman, because this is public money and there ought to be, in my view, and it's a personal view, a great degree of accountability.
Yeah.
But thank you for the question.
Yeah, but they said we can't tell them what they're going to spend it on. That's the remedy. Yeah.
Any further comments or questions on this particular one? Councillor Turner. Put your foot, please.
Just briefly going back to the first complaint, when you asked for the amount of compensation, etc. Perhaps we should also include the number of cases in there as well.
Yes, if
I think that would be quite relevant.
Those figures will be readily available. Thank you. Yeah. The report has been moved and seconded. All those in favour? Anyone against? No, that is carried. Thank you very much. Okay, if we can move on to item number 5, the update on the use of resources by councillors. This is, thank you for your attendance. Yes. This is an annual report that is presented at this time of year in the interests of transparency. The report is there in front of you, and you have got the protocol as well as an appendix for the use of resources by councillors, county council resources by councillors, and in Appendix B and Appendix C you've got a setting out of costs that have gone above what is regarded as the average for use of those financial use of those resources. You've got on page 31 a number of recommendations that have been set out, which I will move. Second. Mr. Ford, do you want to make any comments, observations on this report before I throw it open to for discussion?
Just happy to underline, really, Chair, that in terms of both appendices, B and C, this is obviously about councillors undertaking council duties, basically. Clearly, Appendix C about the out of contract charges, that's an issue that the committee have asked for to look at previously. We'll continue to see some higher charges there, despite members' best efforts, which is the point I make in the report, really. I think members are doing what they can. They're contacting ICT in advance of going abroad, and yet they still seem to be hitting problems. Often it seems to be to do with maritime internet, really, and if a device is on, it's looking for data, basically. So we're hoping that the new contract will help address some of those issues, basically. And the proposal to have a data cap is really just to add a further layer of protection for members, really. So if they're abroad, they have getting that permission from ICT to use their device abroad, that it won't be possible to go beyond a £50 charge if that was to be incurred at all.
Good, thank you very much for that. Any comments or questions? Councillor Henry.
I know this is supposed to be in the interest.
Can you speak into the microphone?
Yeah. Thanks, Chair. I'm saying I know this is as councillors we're trying to be crystal clear about what we're doing and what we're spending. But for those members who are indicating that they will pay for the extra charge, is there a need for them to be entered into a public document?
Well, the report, officers have been asked to report on charges that go above the contract level. So that's why it's here. But there's also the indication that in one or two cases, those members want to repay some of those amounts. There's no expectation on them to do so. But that's why it's reported. Okay? Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Councillor Purdue-Horan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I was horrified to see that I was leading a list of, in this case, phone charges, and what I wanted to contribute to today's meeting. Well, firstly, my attempt to stay in touch only by checking my emails, because I still had my personal phone for my personal use, which I didn't get caught out on, but for some reason, which I've still got to investigate why, I got caught out on the NCC phone, and it would seem it's probably internet, maritime internet, which is, and I have admonished myself and decided to take a punishment beating, mainly because I'm certainly not as busy as you, Mr. Chairman, and so I can't claim for that portion that I was overwhelmed with constituency business. I had some, but certainly not to that degree, which I'm sure others are. And I absolutely defend that we should not have to be penalised. But on this occasion, I can't say that I was overworked on that particular week. Anyway, that's my choice, and I'll sort that out with the officers. But my plea is, and I've obviously not sort of investigated what is proposed. My plea is not to use a sledgehammer to crack a nut. It is entirely reasonable if voluntarily councillors wish to keep in touch for various reasons. And obviously it's a commitment to serve our constituents as much as anything else. And so we should try and think, how can we make it easier and for us not to fall into a trap that we certainly don't intend to. It's certainly something that I would strongly suggest that no councillor would abuse, and certainly I that was not my intention. So I'll leave it at that.
No, thank you. Well, if you look at the recommendations, you'll see that that's exactly what we're trying to do, to take this further, to try and avoid any or as few additional charges as possible. But I don't think we should apologise for trying to keep in touch with our constituents whilst we are away. Whilst some issues can be left, others may need urgent attention. I remember a year ago, one of my constituents, or more than one, were subject to the potential for flooding. It was just below their doorway, and they were obviously very concerned about that, and I had to and did get involved, and fortunately by the time I returned it had been sorted, and the resident was delighted about that. It's very easy to criticise, but I make no apologies for trying to keep in touch with my residents, my constituents, whilst I am on holiday. Okay? Anything further? Report has been moved and seconded. All those in favour? Anyone against? That's unanimous. Thank you. The next item on the agenda is the Councillor Induction and Development Programme. This is a suggested induction and development programme for after next year's county council elections, for members either returning or being elected new to this authority, so they can have a programme of inductions. I have suggested to officers that it would, I think, be helpful to members, new members, if as much as possible of this induction could be conducted online with the option to actually tune in and pick it up as and when you want to, which is the way forward, I think, with a lot of organisations now. I know I get that through my exam board work. Can I log on and do the training, which I did some short training the other day, and it was at my convenience, and I think that needs to be the case for members. So with that, I'm happy to move the recommendations on page 46.
Second.
Any comments or questions? Yes, Councillor Meakin.
Thank you, Chair. Can I welcome the plan for the council inductions for 25 to 29? One of the first things members have got used to is the sheer size of Nottinghamshire County Council. One thing that's been clear to me is difficult for councils to track members of staff. Numbers of times I've called in and I can't find who's there and everything like that. Is there any way we can do something like a quarterly? I've rung in sometimes and that person has moved on. Is there anything the members can get some kind of a quarterly? So we know who to contact because people change, don't they? Move on. Would that be something we could do?
So we are looking at a new business management system which will have those facilities built in, but that's not for a couple of years, so you'd have to do something in the interim. We could certainly make sure you get notified of because there's key people that you all members tend to contact, aren't there? We could probably get a key update on key people just to tide us over till we implement that new system.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. If there are no further comments or questions, the recommendation has been moved and seconded. All those in favour? Anyone against? That's carried unanimously. Thank you very much. The next item on the agenda is the whistleblowing policy, which again, the report is set out and the whistleblowing policy is set out. I move the recommendations at the top of page 52.
Second.
Thank you. Heather, is there anything you want to say on this? This is yours, isn't it? Your policy. Charlie, sorry, my mistake.
Thank you, Chair. The whistleblowing policy in front of members as the result of a fairly long process of looking at how we can make our whistleblowing policy work better for the council. So members will be aware we've reported to committee before as part of the regular whistleblowing update on how the policy is working in practice. The policy has been rewritten from scratch to try to make it easier to navigate for members of staff and for managers who will be looking at any whistleblowing reports made under the policy. One of the main things that we're trying to do with the policy is to improve accessibility for members of staff so they can see what is in the policy that applies to them and how they can make a report under it. So we're looking at introducing a new online reporting system for people to be able to submit complaints through there, and also improving the website around it so that people wanting to make complaints through the policy are aware what the ramifications of the policy are and can submit it easily to get to the right person to review. We've also tried to improve the way in which managers can interpret what they need to do once something that might come under the policy, what the next stage in the process is in terms of making sure that the monitoring officer is made aware of it, the proper processes are followed. The policy has been shared with representatives of trade unions who were broadly supportive of the measures within it. There were a few areas that were feedback that we took on board, so clarifying something around what the ramifications are if someone makes a report in relation to potentially their own wrongdoing. But primarily the focus of trade union feedback was about how we can make this policy more visible to people, not necessarily in the county hall and out in our satellite offices or other areas, to be sure that they're aware that it exists and they can make reports under it if they want to. And for that reason, one of the recommendations in this is that the policy be implemented once we've had a chance to let officers know what's changed in it, and also reinforcing the fact that the policy is there. Because one issue that we do have is that people might bring forward a report which isn't identified by the person making it as being a whistleblowing report, but it still falls under that policy. So we need to make sure that managers are aware that the policy exists and that they're going to deal with it appropriately in accordance with the proposed policy. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any comments or questions on the whistleblowing policy? Happy to accept it. The report has been moved and seconded. All those in favour? No one against. Thank you very much, and thanks for that. The next item on the agenda, item 8, is the alternative service delivery models. Now, this is it seems a very convoluted title, I have to say. I think basically we know them as arm's length companies, and there has been some concern that has grown over recent years as to how we implement governance arrangements as the county council for those arm's length companies, and indeed how we train and ensure that the people that we appoint, usually to the board of directors of those companies, are supported and given appropriate training and know where to go to for advice. What's happened in the past is that people have been appointed to them. I remember being appointed to Futures many years ago and just told to get on with it. And I found my name appearing in Companies House, and it still appears there in old things, not really knowing anything about the operation of a company. And that's not satisfactory. It's not satisfactory at all. And this report and the recommendations that go with it are really to start the firing pistol to change all of that and to improve accountability and control and understanding. So I'm going to move the recommendations. But I'm going to ask Derek Higton to say something about all this, because most of the arm's length companies sit in his directorship as corporate director for Place, and those that don't sit, he's got experience of from his many years here in working for the county council. So he knows everything about arm's length companies, and in less than 5 minutes is going to impart all of that knowledge to you. Derek, over to you.
Thank you, Chairman, for your confidence in me. Good morning, members. I'm not the author of the report, so other colleagues might wish to present elements of the report to you. But I think the thrust of the report, as the Chairman has stated, is to give us the opportunity to consider how we might regularise and improve the arrangements that we've got that have grown up over a number of years as the council's portfolio of arm's length companies has developed and changed and grown. This is an opportunity for us to consider how we might both support those companies more effectively from a governance perspective, and also how we might support both officers and members who are appointed to sit on usually the boards of companies in various capacities. We've got, as the paper suggests, a diverse portfolio of companies, all of which really focus in on delivering core provision, core services for the council, so they discharge critical functions for us. All of them, as the paper highlights, are in good health, both financially and in terms of performance. So we're not coming at this from a position of deficit or weakness or difficulty or crisis. We're in a good place with these companies, and our governance arrangements from a company perspective are quite strong. But there is, as ever, always things that we can do to improve, regularise, and ensure that from within the council we just perhaps a little bit more offer a little bit more transparency and a little bit more visibility about our governance arrangements for both members and the public as well. And there are a number of recommendations within the report that will help us on that journey towards greater resilience, I suppose, in our governance arrangements for companies. I'm happy, I'm really here to be able to answer any particular questions that members may have around the individual companies and their particular arrangements. As Councillor Owen has said, I've got experience of most of them over the years, but other colleagues may wish to introduce broader elements of the report too.
Before I throw it open, any other officer wish to?
I'll just run through the main
Yeah,
proposals
go for
quickly. So, as Councillor Owen's already alluded to, One of the proposals is for a development of a training protocol. So we've got a more systematic approach to how we train people who've been nominated to positions. Reviewing the approach to selection of nominees, and there's a number of options there. So again, we're going to look at those options and then come up with a process for approval. Having further advice, as Councillor Owen also mentioned, about where to seek advice from if there's concerns over conflicts of interest or anything like that. The role of the statutory officers is important, so particularly the Section 151 officer and the monitoring officer. So when we're developing the protocols, the idea is to sort of weave their involvement into that so that they can maximise their effective oversight over the companies. An approach, we need to agree an approach to performance reporting. At the moment, it's a bit, it's evolved over time, as Derek's just said. So there's no consistent way. So this is about building on what we've got, but making things more clearer for members so they know where things will be reported to and there's consistency in how and when they're reported. The expectation, I think, is that an annual report at least will come to this committee as part of the committee's normal audit and governance role. But I think there's also a role for overview and scrutiny somewhere in that, deciding what that is and making it proportionate to the issues so that it doesn't take over the work of any committee is really where we need to have a dialogue with the chairman and vice chairman here and the overview committee. There's a proposal to seek from each individual company an annual assurance report or statement so that we're getting companies to be proactive in telling us what their position is, which should help with the flow of information and keeping that good connection that Derek and other colleagues already have with the companies. And then corporate record keeping is really the last area, to try and have a more centralised rather than a dispersed model of keeping records. So it's not just down to individuals in departments, and just like you were saying before about individuals moving on and not necessarily knowing who's there next, making sure the records are kept in one centralised location so that we can access them. The recommendations are on page 9 and there's quite a few of them. Thank you.
Thank you. Any comments or questions? Councillor Creamer.
Yeah, just a short question. I totally agree with what's been said as well, and Councillor Owen as well, about the training being necessary, just being dumped into outside bodies, etc. But I just wonder about the training itself. Will there be a specific budget for that, or will it come out of the general training budget? Because on a personal level, I don't think there's enough in the general training budget, let alone something as specific as this. So when it actually comes to budgeting for the training, will that be under a separate heading or the general one? Because that's just a bit of a concern going forward.
Thank you. I suspect it's a bit too early to say that at the moment, and it will decide on what programme is felt is required as to whether or not there would be the Section 151 officer's got something to say on it, so pin your ears back.
You'd be pleased to know that governance is really important, and therefore I would not want to be thinking that a restriction in terms of a training budget is something that would trump the requirements to have good governance.
There you are then. Unlimited.
Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Butler and then Councillor Turner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I really just wanted to pick up on the points you made, because over the years, in whatever role I've had at the council, I suddenly found myself being appointed as a director to, I think it was Scape, which you think, oh my word, I'm a director of a company now. And as you say as well, you find yourself a bit surprised, listed on Companies House and all the rest of it. So this is going to be really helpful to explain to members just exactly how it all works. As being a director, what your roles and responsibility are. But also, I have to say that and I'm sure others have experienced this, I duly turn up at the board meeting or whatever of Scape and being asked to make decisions or vote on decisions there for the good of the organisation, their company, and at times wondering, well, I'm not absolutely sure what I'm voting on, because I haven't really had a lot of information and background as to what my role as a director is, wearing my county council hat, but then being a director of an arm's length company. So it's always been a little bit of concern in my, always was a concern in my mind, and I'm sure others have that as well. So if there's anything we can do to help make that clear, that's got to be welcome. Also, I think the perception of the public. Now, let's be honest, a lot of the public don't exactly hold councillors in high esteem, which is completely unfair, as we know. But there are some as well who read up on what we're doing, and quite rightly so, and they suddenly see we're a director of a company. I wouldn't be surprised if some people think that, oh, they're onto a good thing here, because that's perception, isn't it? So, is there scope perhaps for I don't know, some sort of documentation for the council, making it clear somewhere that if a councillor is a director of an arm's length company such as these, they're not in it for themselves, so to speak, that they are very much there as a representative of the county council. And hopefully it's not necessary, but again, just thinking of the clarity and transparency and understanding of it all.
Thank you very much. I think you've noted that, haven't you?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you. That's useful. Councillor Turner.
Just some general comments about arm's length companies and governance. I suspect that the number of contractors that are used now with some of these companies, it must be difficult to manage all these different contractors that we see, especially when we're looking at Via, for example. And how they are governed. How does that work? Is it successful? Does it cause you challenges?
Yes, I mean both for a number of the companies mentioned in the report, probably ARC, Via, and Futures are the three companies that would have the biggest subcontractor arrangements for the different areas of their business, and all of them will have different approaches because they operate in different markets to subcontractor management. In the case of Via, and it's worth saying here that from the council's perspective, we wholly own Via, so we control Via as a company. And so the board of directors is entirely county council nominated, and the board of directors therefore has responsibility for the strategic direction of Via as a company. The council's control of the services that Via delivers, highways management services, come through our contractual arrangement with Via and our contractual management and monitoring of Via, which officers do, which stands apart from the company governance. So we know through that contractual arrangement that Via has got a very strong kind of strategic framework, if you like, for subcontract management, and has appointed a number of largest companies who are local to manage a whole range of subcontracts on its behalf, whether that's for highways repairs and maintenance, tree repairs, those kinds of things. And Via as a company manages those frameworks on the council's behalf, if you like. If highways was internally managed, we'd have a similar set of subcontractor frameworks, but we'd manage them directly. And within the contract for Via, Via report into our contract managers, our head of highways, on the performance of the various subcontractors, and of course on a range of performance metrics that we set for Via as our delivery partner, if you like. So from a contractual and from a delivery perspective, I wouldn't have any concerns about the subcontractor frameworks that we've got through Via. As ever, there are always going to be in a large county where we're doing thousands of pieces of individual work every day of the week or every week of the year. There are going to be occasions where things don't quite go to plan, and no doubt members will be able to think of some of those. But broadly speaking, we don't have any kind of fundamental concerns about the subcontractor frameworks, and they are flexible so that if we do have performance issues, we can change that framework and remove a subcontractor.
Thank you very much. All happy? Yes, Councillor Purdy-Horn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This some aspects of this item excites some of my colleagues. Can I welcome the report and just say this review is certainly long overdue. Arm's length companies are an interesting part of it, and of course are critical to the delivery of public service. And of course, my colleagues are particularly exercised with anything that to do with roads and VIA. I'm told that there have been instances where we have VIA blaming the county council, or the county council blaming VIA, as if they are completely separate entities. And some of my colleagues feel that's not acceptable for transparency, and others I've been asked to request that we consider making it absolutely clear that that some of our partnerships with these companies are transparent, that they are wholly owned by Notts County Council or otherwise, to assist with the public's understanding. I don't think it's fair that I request Mr. Higton to share with us any confidential conversations that he's had in negotiations, but we are mindful that contracts are coming up for renewal and being negotiated, and we just want more assurance that there is more transparency for information. Thank you.
Well, I'm not sure that this report. You want to say something on that? Go for it then.
Yeah, happy to respond to that. Thank you, Councillor, for that question. I suppose in respect of VIA in particular, and also ARC, it's worth noting that both the contract extension for ARC and for VIA were discussed and debated recently at the Overview Committee. I think in July of this year. And the recommendations of the Overview Committee were then taken into account by Cabinet in its decision to extend the contracts for both ARC and VIA last month. I think it's also worth saying that as a matter of public record, therefore, both the scrutiny reports and the subsequent Cabinet reports made clear the ownership and their publicly available reports, of course, made clear the ownership arrangements and the control arrangements for both companies. And of course, the ownership and control arrangements more broadly for our wider portfolio of companies are made clear within this report. So I think it is fair to say that it's a transparent matter of public record around the ownership and control arrangements for VIA.
Good, thank you for that. Yes, I don't think we should confuse transparency, which is what I think we're good at, with disagreement with decisions, which is an entirely different matter altogether. And I'm delighted to hear that we've got the independent group excited. That's a real achievement for us. Anyway, we've had the discussion. As I say, this is really the opening salvo in this whole process. It's not going to happen overnight. So if there are no further comments or questions, all those in favour of the recommendations, anyone against, thank you, that is unanimous. Move to the last item on the agenda, which is the work programme, and I move the recommendation at the top of page 74. Second. Any comments or questions? Happy to accept. All those in favour? Thank you, that's unanimous again. Thank you very much for your attendance, and I declare the meeting closed at 11:20.